Welcome to The Longer Game, the only show that's dedicated to the future of retail. We bring on real-life people in the retail industry. We talk about their experiences, we share their stories, we apply it to what's currently going on in the market, and we look towards the future of retail. You could say it's Retail Reimagined. My name is Michael Maher. I run a customized, done-for-you service agency called Cartology that helps brands win on Amazon. Now, while my expertise stems in the Amazon field, we bring on a wide array of guests because retail is expansive. You've got e-commerce. Yes, you've got marketplaces like Amazon. You've also got brick and mortar that is evolving. You've got logistics. You've got technology, finance. There are so many aspects to retail, and it's complicated. So we're here to bring you the entire story. Do you think that you have an interesting story and you'd like to tell it on the podcast? Then go to thelongergame.com and fill out a form to be a guest on the show today. You can catch The Longer Game on any social channels: LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, and our website, thelongergame.com. We've got all awesome guests on this show, so that I will promise. Are you ready to hear more about the future of retail? Let's get down to business. Welcome, everybody, to The Longer Game, the podcast where we talk all about retail. And that means we talk about all different kinds of things, from in-store retail to e-commerce. And there's also a global market out there. And so that means we sometimes talk about what's going on in different parts of the world, not just the U.S. And today I have someone who knows a little bit of something about that. Her name is Shaheen Samavati, and she is at Vera Content. And I'm going to let her tell you more about what she does. Welcome to the show, Shaheen.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Of course. Happy you're here.
Should I already tell you a little bit more?
Yeah, tell us a little bit more about what you do as the CEO and just what Vera Content does in general.
All right, so, Vera Content, we call ourselves a multilingual content marketing agency or a global content marketing agency. We're specialized in adapting content marketing projects for different European markets mainly, but we also work with other markets around the world. And so I'm a CEO of Vera Content, like you mentioned, and I'm originally from the US, but I've been living in Spain for the past decade or so, for a while now, 15 years almost.
Wow.
Yeah, so halfway European. And,
it's a very different way of life from what I know. I know some people who have lived or live in Spain, and it seems like just different pace. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So I love Spain. I love living in Europe, and decided to stay here. And so, but I also have a, I guess, unique perspective being from the US and having worked in companies there, and then also worked in communications and marketing here in Spain. I also, my background's in print journalism, so that's something I brought with me into this business as well. Because really we're specialized in content creation. So we do content creation for websites, for social media, obviously blog content. We do print materials as well. So, and in creating those adapted materials for different international markets.
What's the biggest, I'm now just more curious, what's the biggest difference for you working and living in the US versus working and living in Spain?
Wow, there's
probably weren't expecting that, but yeah, I just really, my own curiosity is piqued.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, the pace is definitely different. I live in Malaga, so I also live on the coast of Spain, in southern Spain. So it's definitely different pace of life. And well, yeah, I guess maybe there's like a lot more. I said the biggest difference is like the car culture in the US, and I feel like there's more separation between people, and you need to use a car to go everywhere, where in Malaga, Spain is specifically, but most of Spain, it's like everything is so walkable, and people live like so much closer together, and everything is just walking distance. Like I pretty much never use my car and every time I go to the US, I'm also from suburban Ohio, so it's not like I'm from New York.
Really? Where in Ohio are you from?
You're in Cincinnati, right? So my family's all from Akron, but
oh, okay.
Yeah, but I did live in Cincinnati for a few years in high school.
Everything is very spread out.
For 2 years.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's not too far from me. Everything is very spread out. So if I want to go to the grocery store, it's not very walkable. But that sounds honestly more ideal. I live in a smaller suburb called Milford, which is not that far from Amelia. And the downtown area is just booming. There's a distillery, there's a brewery, there's a coffee shop, there's a natural grocery store, there's like restaurants, there's all these things that have shown up. My wife and I used to live up the street from this, like walking distance. We're like, where was this when we were here? We would have walked to that stuff all the time and then walked back home because it would have been super close, especially in the summertime. So that I think is nice, and it's certainly a different change of pace compared to what most people are used to in the U.S. So just driving everywhere, like I don't know how people do the rush hour traffic thing, like that drives me crazy. But I also have the benefit and luxury of working from home. So
yeah, there's definitely like the people moving to more walkable neighborhoods and shopping centers that feel like city centers. That's like a whole trend that's been happening in the U.S. But yeah, in Europe, I know when I first came here, it felt a bit like going to Disneyland, but actually that's just like the way it is all the time. So. These cute little old towns,
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that's the norm. I mean, some of the towns are easily several hundred years old. You just don't get that in the U.S.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I realized Disneyland is modeled off of Europe. It's not the other way around.
Yes. Well, and they do a good job, honestly, of recreating some of those things. I'm a big Disney World fan, so I go there a good amount. And Epcot makes you feel like you're immersed in the
absolutely.
town, which is super cool. But brands that are right now super heavy in the U.S., going and expanding internationally feels like, I think, exciting because there's a new market, new ground, new territory to take. It's not just as easy as let's translate our website or translate something on Amazon or translate our social media content and let's just start accessing those people. There's a lot more that's involved. What are brands not thinking about that they probably should be thinking about when they think about going international?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it needs to be part of, like, I've definitely seen brands come to us, like, interested in doing, like, campaigns in different countries when maybe they weren't quite ready for it, because I think, obviously, it needs to be part of an entire go-to-market strategy, and you need to have your whole distribution set up, your sales network, and a big part of it too is like customer support and being able to like deal with all those inquiries once they come in, because that is something that we do for some of our clients to some degree, is like helping them with answering messages in the local languages. But also there's only externalizing that only goes so far. You also need to have the internal resources to be able to solve problems that happen in those different markets. So it's like being really ready for it and like being able to actually deliver your product and service in each market that you're going into before you start doing like a marketing blast there, for sure.
Like just from a product labeling standpoint, do you have the right language? You can't just go into Spain and Germany and France and be English only. Like there's probably requirements over there for how your product will show up.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's like you see when you go to a supermarket in Spain or anywhere in Europe, you've got like 10 different languages on the back of the product a lot of time because people want to save on printing and not having to create and packaging for every market. Yeah.
Do you think that is helpful or more harmful to be putting 10 languages on a product versus really being intentional about creating something specifically for Spain or for Croatia? I'm just now saying countries in Europe that I know and remember. Yeah. But like, is that okay, or is that potentially a problem because it's off-putting to a consumer?
I think it depends on the particular piece of content. Definitely when it comes and like what's the purpose of it, and you have to kind of balance like what's like clearly like the optimal solution is to create totally unique packaging and totally unique marketing messages for every single market. At the same time, you have to like balance that with the cost and the practicality, because it costs money. The more separate designs you have to make, the more different more times you have to print something, or the more times like you have to create unique content for a different market. I think it's something that you have to evaluate, and like how do you want to like use your resources. And I think it's like there's no one right answer to the way to do it. It really depends on like who's your target market, what you're selling, and how customized it really needs to be to achieve your goals, whatever those goals are.
Do you have any scenarios of like someone who's gone into these markets and maybe wasn't really thinking about this. Like, give us an idea of what you're actually going through and how you're talking to brands about this.
Yeah, well, we were working with, like, for example, a mobile phone accessories brand that was like quite popular in the U.S. and was looking to expand into Europe, and basically initially they wanted to like target a lot of different European markets with very separate marketing materials, and we were running different. They wanted to launch like different social media channels for lots of different markets. We ended up working with them on market research and deciding to really narrow it down to 2 key markets to start with, because I think it's like important to, especially when it comes to, for example, social media strategy, to have like a strategy that works before you try to like replicate it in lots of different markets, because you can waste a lot of resources doing something that's not working across like 20 markets or something, because that's just 20 times the cost of management. So we decided to like double down on like the German and UK markets because those were important for them, and then having a global page for the rest, a European page for the rest of Europe that was in English. But I think it really depends, like I was saying, on the particular situation and what your business strategy is, which markets you decide are priority, and then to decide strategically like how to invest and how much content to create for each of those. And we even actually went more local on that strategy, where we were creating a lot of content just about specific cities within those markets, because they thought that for their product it made a lot of sense, because they wanted to be seen as kind of cool and trendy, so we really focused on like the London market and the Berlin market and like events happening there. And
so it wasn't even country specific, it was more city specific based on the brand. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and some activations they were doing in those markets, it made sense for them to focus on those cities.
If you're also going into specific cities, even in the same country, the language might be slightly different, and what is important to those people might be different, i.e., if you're in a big city, the current trends might be the big focus. If you're in a smaller town, maybe people are worried about community and the things that are going on that community, not what's going on a global stage. Like, how does that play into what you're doing for people?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying it's really on a case-by-case basis, depending on your strategy. I'd say like most commonly we are doing like countrywide when it comes to like social media accounts. But we have had some cases too where even that we went a little more local. Like for example, a typical like dilemma is like, should you create a separate, like if you're targeting Dutch-speaking market, should you create like separate pages for
like separate handles, right?
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was going to ask you, is like, what do you even do? Do you create totally new handles, or like how does that work? Like, what are some instances where maybe you've done both, or maybe you've just kept it on one page?
Yeah, well, of course, like depends on the platform. Like with Facebook, you have what's called like the global. You have like Facebook global pages. So basically, you have one page, and then depending on the IP that you're visiting from, it will like automatically show you the content for your market. But that's something that's pretty unique to Facebook. Like other platforms don't have that. Not even Instagram, which is still Meta. But like on Instagram, you have to create separate handles for each. If you want to target different markets, you either need to have one central Instagram, or you need to I'm going to have my brand Germany, my brand whatever, and have 10 of those if you want to target different markets. And it's not going to redirect people. Like they have to specifically go, follow that country page. We do see a lot of people doing that on Instagram, and now we've also had demand for doing that on TikTok as well. So yeah, but it is really like the typical thing that clients come to us and are like, okay, we have another thing as well. Like a typical challenge is that that people maybe weren't putting too much thought into their international social media strategy historically. So they might have like distributors in different markets who are managing, who have just like taken it upon themselves to create a local social media page
without even telling the brand or consulting them.
Sometimes, yeah.
Wow.
Like sometimes, like a new person comes into a marketing role at a brand, and it's like, oh, what's this page that we found here in Saudi Arabia? Like that's posting this random stuff. So. Yeah.
That does not sound ideal.
Yeah. And I think it's there was like maybe a decade ago that it was like, oh, fine, do whatever you want on social media. Like, people didn't see it as such an important channel, and now I think everyone realizes how critical it is and how much visibility you can get and how much it can impact your reputation and your brand. So we've seen a lot of times when companies come to us, it's like marketing directors coming to us saying like, okay, we want to like rein in what we're doing across the global channels. We want to create some standards, some guidelines, and create like a global strategy and do something a little more consistent across the markets.
Are they coming to you and trying to get help to get control of those accounts? Like, is that something you can help them do, or is that something that's really between them and whoever created the account?
That is like a big technological challenge. Sometimes it is really difficult to even find out who still has the password to that account, because sometimes it's like someone created it, an intern made it in 2008 or something, and nobody has the password anymore. And and obviously Meta is like notorious for not helping you with these kinds of things.
It's really not dissimilar to Amazon. There's so many people who, I remember when I first got started in e-commerce 15 years ago, I would walk a trade show floor and people would be like, we don't want our stuff on Amazon. We don't want it anywhere. Like, that was something that they were super adamant about. Now, everyone wants to be on there. They recognize the visibility that it can provide. But now you've got these content contributions from 10 years ago that are incorrect. And maybe it was done by, like, those first contributions can stick often. So if you're now trying to go and change them, but it's not from the original account and you're having to push those contributions, it becomes a nightmare. And people just aren't forward thinking, so they're just letting whatever happen. And I think a lot of people don't realize, when you don't make a decision or you're not intentional about the decision, you're already making a decision. It's just that you don't care, and that whatever happens, but that decision's being made. It's not that it's not happening. It's just you're not choosing the right decision, I think, to be intentional about setting it up in the first place, or gating it and saying, hey, for anyone that we're working with on a distributor level, do not do this. Do not do this. This is for us to decide. Like, you don't set those things up. You're making a decision to allow them to happen.
Yeah, like for example, like highly regulated industries, like famously were like staying away from social media we're very, very late to the game of like having their own presence on social media, like energy companies, financial services companies. Like, they didn't want to touch social media for a lot of years until it was like, oh wait, people are still talking about us. We just have no control over what they're saying because they're saying it on other channels. So I think every company in every industry now realizes the importance of like having a presence and being part of the conversation about their brand, not letting other people kind of control the narrative.
Yeah. What are some things that brands, when they do go, to a local market in somewhere in Europe, what are things that they maybe just ingrained thinking that's incorrect, that if they could flip this to what the information that you have and they could flip their mindset to this, it would help them get up and running quicker?
What do you mean exactly?
People oftentimes, when they get started, let's say on Amazon, they're like, okay, well, we just want to grow, but we don't want to spend any money on ads. Okay, well, you can't do that. It's not possible. So you have to reframe how you think about stuff. So what are some things that brands, when they go into local markets, are thinking that often are wrong, that if they were to change their thinking, it would help them to, I think, just get a better head start?
I mean, definitely when it comes to social media, that it's like not enough to just post. I think most people know that at this point, but it's about like actually engaging with the community, like following relevant accounts, engaging with them, like doing collaborative posts with other brands that maybe already have a established presence, working with influencers, of course, investing in paid ads, like actually taking actions to grow your account, not expecting that you're just going to post and that people will magically find your content, because it doesn't work like that anymore.
You have
Never did, I don't think.
You have to be engaged. Well, I think when social media first got started out, like, I remember my wife and I were dating at the time. She's like, hey, check out this thing called Facebook. Like, I was in college when it launched, so I was the target market. And it was very much about finding the people you kind of already knew and just engaging with them. Like, it was very much intentional. It wasn't just random. But then I think there probably was a period where you saw friends of friends or things that they were doing, and so that caused you to maybe expand. But I feel like now there's just so much content, there's so much information out there, that it's really easy to drown in that or get lost in, what people call doom scrolling. So you either get overwhelmed with information, you consume way too much, and then you start to curate that content. So like that is why engagement is so important, because you don't show up at the top of people's list. They don't know you exist.
Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. And like the nature of social media has completely evolved, like you said, over the years. And it's all recommended content now. And it's definitely harder to get organically seen on social than ever before because of just the proliferation of content and without like paying for ads or like working with influencers that have a lot of exposure, because it's starting with a new account, especially like if you're opening new accounts for the new markets, for example, and starting with a really low following, like to get seen on Instagram, for example, is something you have to definitely take actions to get picked up by the algorithm.
So let's say someone is new to Instagram, they're wanting to get picked up, and you've talked about this evolution of social media from 15, 10, probably even 5 years ago to now. What do you start to advise them on in order to actually get growth? Because that's what people want. They're not getting on social media just for the sake of posting content. They want to grow. So like, how do you advise them to start actually doing that?
Yeah, I mean, first is to have like a strategy and like an approach, like having a plan for like the content you're going to post that's specifically targeting your niche and is like actually, so like I said, it's not just about posting, but the baseline is you have to be posting good content. So, and posting regularly, of course.
Sure. When you say regularly, what do you mean?
I mean, the minimum posting that we will do is like twice a week, but ideally you're posting daily or even more. Yeah.
Does that matter per industry?
I mean, I think that like one thing is like your industry, because what people are doing in your industry can be very different than like what people in your target are actually like engaging with. So I think you need to benchmark yourself against like brands or just influencers in your niche who are actually like engaging your target audience. So, and that might actually be people who are outside of your industry, but who your target audience are engaging with, right? So they're like your content competitors, we like to call it, not your actual competitors.
Okay.
So what was my point there? We were talking about, posting frequency, right? So, I mean, generally like posting more frequently is better than posting less frequently, but I think the important thing is being consistent though. So I think it has to do with like how posting at a level that's sustainable for you and that the quality is high, like, and that the posts that you're putting out there actually like have a strong hook and get people engaged is more important than the actual frequency of how much you do it. Like posting 5 crap posts a week is worse than posting one really good one that gets a lot of engagement. So. Yeah,
it seems like people prefer quantity. I mean, if you just look at like, sometimes I feel like news outlets, which are dying anyway, just content, who's the first market, content. But like people don't engage with that anymore. They don't start to trust that if you're just trying to be the first to market and you don't care about quality or accuracy.
Yeah. I mean, if like say you're posting, like you follow someone and if they're posting frequently, if you really like their content and you follow them because you like it and they're posting frequently, you're going to see it and you're going to engage with it more. But if they're posting content that's not relevant to you, you're going to see it and you're going to unfollow. So it comes down to that. It's like the the amount that you can do, but that's still like that's going to keep people engaged with your content. Like
relevancy matters, because if it becomes spammy, they don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when we talked about someone getting on Instagram, they're wanting to get up and running. So like the baseline is you have to post good, relevant content, not just looking at your direct competitors from a product standpoint, but content competitors who you want to be similar to because you want to engage your audience. Then what do you do?
What do you do in terms of
what's the next step to grow?
How do you
grow
get
your
clients
business?
from this? Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Okay. What are people's objectives? I'm sure it's not just to get impressions. Like that's the start. But yeah, then how do you advise them to grow?
Yeah, I mean, generally, I mean, with any kind of content marketing, you do have the challenge of like attribution of like how do you like a
Sure.
lot of it is like you're doing it for brand recognition to create like some buzz around your product or service, and it's like ultimately you want people to buy more of your product, but it can be difficult to say exactly how many of those people came from that particular campaign that you did on social media. Um, but it also, like we're saying, depends. I mean, definitely when it comes to online retail, it's easier than with other um, in other industries because you can actually sell directly through social platforms. You can actually run ads and send people.
Would you
to
recommend
your
that though to
products.
people? Or would you recommend them to direct people to their website?
Well, to recommend, I mean, you can have a call to action that sends them to either place, but I definitely would recommend, like if you're using Instagram to use the ads if you're selling a product for sure. That
But you
allows
would
people
recommend them
directly
to
buy
use like an Instagram shop or send them to someone's direct to consumer site.
This is a good question for a retail expert. um, yeah, I think I definitely think there can be benefits of using the social selling tools directly, but I don't actually have a lot of experience with that. So in my experience, it's more sending people to, like for example, with the mobile phone accessory brand I was talking about, they have their own shop on their website, and we were always driving traffic there. We weren't using like the social selling tools within Instagram. But I think these are also like a bit nascent, so it's like hard to say.
I feel like sending
Yeah.
someone to direct to consumer site makes way more sense simply because as we move into a place where attribution is harder because we're able to collect less data from ad platforms, you need first party data. So if they're not coming to your site and giving you first party data and they're just making a purchase, it can be really challenging to grow your customer base, especially if the shop on like Instagram or whatever is not as native or is not as user friendly as something like Amazon. Like Amazon for me is a huge customer acquisition channel. People think of it and get frustrated like, oh, well, we don't own our customer. Yeah, of course you don't, because Amazon's invested trillions of dollars in order to get more people to their site that are engaged and are ready to purchase. But you do a good job of getting the product in their hands, telling a little bit of your brand story, getting them to maybe follow you on social media. Now you can get them to come to your site. You can offer exclusives. You can do all the things from a strategic standpoint that get them to come and give you that first party data. Now you can market directly to them. But if they're just buying something on social media, it's probably a lot harder to actually get, or maybe you don't ever get that first party data.
Yeah, and I think there are tools like there's a partnership between Amazon and Meta that there's some new tools for like selling through Instagram, but I haven't personally tested them yet.
It seems very, very small, but yes, you can in some cases purchase through Amazon. And Amazon's always kind of testing stuff. They had their Inspire program, which was their social media content basically platform, and they shut that down because it was not working. And I think partnerships is something that's going to be big, or is starting to be big for Amazon. Like Buy with Prime, they've now partnered with Shopify to get that to be something official app inside the store, so that they have the distribution network. Shopify got rid of their distribution network and sold it to Flexport, or their logistics business, because it's really expensive and challenging to build. And I think they realize that, and Amazon can bring that to the table while still allowing Shopify to do what Shopify does best. Like those partnerships, I think, become super, super important for companies to be able to expand. And I think you look at a brand that's started up in the past 5 or 10 years, if you're not a big consumer brand, you don't need to build an Amazon department or a retail department, or like build all these things inside. You leverage really strong partners who know those channels. You can grow to be a $5, $10, $20 million brand, assuming the demand is there, versus being a big CPG company that has buyers or sales reps internally that go to the buyers at the retailers and have these direct relationships. Like, I just don't think that makes as big of a difference. Like, you can work with channel experts like yourself. You don't need to have someone that does localization internally. You just work with someone who knows really well, and that fractional work can really help you to grow and scale, and do it better than simply trying to half-ass it and do it on your own.
Yeah, absolutely. You actually have another client that's like a jam brand. It's a consumer product, and they only sell through supermarkets. So it's like the digital channel is interesting there, because it's like it's brand building is like the entire strategy.
Sure.
But then, and we do influencer partnerships, and we're showing the product in like nice locations and stuff. But ultimately, it's really hard to say how many people went to the store based on seeing that ad and bought that jam. But we are always answering questions in the chat, being like, people are asking where they can buy the product, but they can't buy it online. So,
well, yeah, I mean, I think that just depends upon what the marketing is for. Like if you are, I think big brands do a good job of doing brand awareness and sometimes do a little bit of spray and pray and are not as focused on attribution and getting more of that customer relationship. Whereas I think newer brands or smaller brands are so hyper-focused on attribution that they lose sight of how effective brand building can be. And there has to be a happy medium between those two things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the trends, or maybe not trends, but what are some of the differences between some of the different markets in Europe? Because I say Europe, that's not like saying, I mean, there's different parts of the U.S., certainly stuff in the South versus the Midwest versus the East Coast. So what are some of those big differences, though, in markets in a Spain versus a France versus a Germany versus a UK? Like, what do some of those differences look like, and how could that potentially impact a brand?
Yeah, I mean, there's really huge cultural differences and over very small geographic distances within the European market. So it's really interesting, like some of the projects we've worked on, like we might do a similar content piece in one market versus another, and it has like a totally different reception or different reaction. Yeah, for example, we had one time a product that was like a cup holder product in a car that people were like really criticizing in the UK market. But it is funny compared to well, it was a US product that they were expanding into Europe. But it was funny because it's just like the perception towards towards certain things can be very different from one to another. For example, with an alcohol brand that we worked with, just like the kind of habits or also the regulations on how you can promote an alcoholic product in one market versus another is very different. So it requires like obviously adapting the content, also thinking about creative ways of like, for example, it was a spirit brand, so it was like, what kind of drinks might they use that spirit in this market versus another, which cocktails are popular in this market versus another, and things like that, and taking into account the cultural context.
It might be like trying to sell an old fashioned to people in Italy where a Negroni is more popular.
Yeah, exactly.
Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Yeah, also like we work with Too Good To Go is one of our clients. It's like a food app, like for a like it's to avoid food waste. You can like buy. Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with this app.
I have heard of it, but basically stuff that is expiring or would expire, you can sell it on this app to people who don't want to miss out on food that really still could still be good.
Yeah, exactly. Like a lot of, I mean, so with that client, for example, we do a lot of like food related, of course, content. Also with the jam brand, for example, we do recipes that you can include the jam in and things like that. And when it comes to food related content, like obviously the cultural differences have a big impact on like the type of content we would do, like what food is popular there, what people can relate to, and all of that.
What would you, if someone's like, I want to launch in France and Germany, what are some of the main cultural differences that you would just kind of let them in on, that maybe if they're like totally brand new, like here's kind of France's MO, here's Germany's kind of MO, and like how we might present stuff to them based on those cultural differences?
Well, we have like entire blog posts about like every European market. So if you wanted to go in more detail, I can recommend the Vericontent blog.
So go to vericontent.com, /blog? Is that where they would go?
It's actually /mix because the name of our blog, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Vericontent.com /mix. I love it. Yeah. What would be an example? You don't have to do France and Germany. I'm just curious. Any two countries, like what would be some differences between those markets?
Yeah. Well, I mean, for example, definitely like privacy is like a thing across Europe, but like in France, for example, they're like very concerned about data privacy. So I think that's something just to take into account with content, and like also like the way people interact on social media and what they're willing to share. I'd say actually both France and Germany are a little bit more reserved in sharing or commenting more on social media compared to other markets. And then of course, like, I mean, just like communication style, writing style, it really varies across the markets. Like in Spain, they're notorious for like very long sentences. They are quite casual in the way in their type of sentence structure and stuff. But yeah, so I don't know. There's like a whole I mean, there's so many things you can say about. I don't know how to summarize down to just like something really succinct. But yeah, I don't know if I'm answering your question.
I've heard specifically when you think about content on an Amazon, like for Amazon Germany, you try to market to someone in Germany in the same way that you do in the US, flowery, colorful language, feel good language. Like that doesn't really fly in the same way that it would in Germany, where they're very more like technical spec focused. That was kind of what I was thinking that you might have insight on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely true. Although I guess it's falling a bit into a stereotype, but
well, sure. I mean,
yeah.
It's probably not going to be true of the whole entire country, but as a whole, I think you think about people in the U.S., they want attachment to a brand. There's a little bit more of an emotional connection, which is why marketing is so big, even though not all the times the marketing claims are true. But people like that. They like to feel good about something they're purchasing.
Definitely. And there's actually a lot of times when definitely the claims are like the most difficult thing that to try to like adapt to another market.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we end up suggesting like a completely different claim, like we need to change this to this. A lot of times American clients are like, oh, but I love my emotional claim, I want it to be the same. And it's like, but it just doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not going to hit with that audience. So it might work here, but you want to sell product, right? So you're going to have to change what you're doing, different approach to actually sell that product.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I appreciate you coming on, Shaheen. If people want to know more about what it is that you're doing, should they look for you maybe napping on a park bench in Spain? Or, where should they find out more about what you're doing other than veracontent.com/mix?
Yeah, well, happy to meet up on the beach in Malaga, but if you're not here, then you can you can find me on Veracontent, veracontent.com, or on LinkedIn. So Shaheen Samavadi on LinkedIn as well. Happy to connect.
Awesome. Well, thank you for coming on. That's it, people. We don't really have anything else for you, so you can go read a blog or do something else, but that's the end of the show. All right, that was the show. What did you think? That was the longer game. We would love for you to share the show with other people and to leave us a review of the show. So go to iTunes, go to Spotify, you can go to YouTube, comment, leave a review, and share this on any social channels that you are active on and wherever you have influence. We want to share this story and stories like it to as many people as possible. Do you have a compelling story and do you want to come on the podcast and talk about it, and you're in the retail industry? Then go to thelongergame.com, fill out a form, and we will contact you about coming on the show. You can find us on any social channels, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and you can go to our website, thelongergame.com, to actually read all of these episodes in blog form in text, because we know not everyone's going to listen. This podcast is brought to you by my agency, Cartology. We are a customized, done-for-you service agency that helps brands win on Amazon. It is super complex selling on the Amazon marketplace. We help simplify that for you. This podcast is also brought to you by Podcastify Me. They are a full-service podcast production company that designs podcasts around people who are paid for their advice. That is coaches. If you want someone to help create, strategize, and distribute your podcast to the masses, go to podcastify.me to find out more. I've so enjoyed that you've been a part of the conversation and that you've given of your time to hear these people's stories. We'd love for you to share. If you want to find out more, just go to thelongergame.com. Hope you have a great rest of your day. Stay blessed. And until next time, cheers.